TPG Telecom has confirmed a customer in Sydney died last week after their mobile phone could not make 000 calls. TPG says at the time of the attempted contact to the 000 service, the TPG Telecom mobile network was operational and no outages were occurring. Well, for more, reporter Max Tillman joins us from Sydney. Max, what can you tell us about this?
Good morning, Gemma. Well, it was fellow telco Telstra who first really sounded the alarm over this issue back in October. Now, the issue was originally from Telstra's perspective that a number of Samsung Galaxy models, so there's about 70 models in particular, 11 of which required effectively urgent recalls and another 60 required urgent updates to their operating system. And that's because Telstra originally identified that those phones were unable to connect to 000 calls, and we've now heard from TPG Telecom or Telco that they have had one of their customers who was attempting to reach 000 on November 13 and has been unable to connect to 000 and has subsequently passed away. Now, back in October when this issue was first identified, Samsung did give a full list of those Samsung Galaxy models that were affected. There were, as I was saying a little bit earlier, 11 models that required urgent and immediate recalls and another 60-odd that required updates to their operating systems. Now, we'd originally heard from the Australian Communication and Media Authority that their initial estimates were up to 50,000 Telstra customers, 50,000 Optus customers had been affected. But at the time, they weren't quite sure how many TPG customers could have been affected as well. Now, it's also important to remember that Vodafone, which is one of the big cellular tower providers here in Australia, is also owned by TPG. Now, in that initial outage that was involving Telstra back in October, the issue was arising when Telstra phones would attempt to connect to a cellular tower. In the instance where Telstra or Optus were not available, those phones naturally connect to another provider like Vodafone. So that was the initial problem that faced Telstra a month ago, really. Now, Samsung or the telcos had given all of those affected customers a 28-day window in order to return their phones. We understand that within that 28-day window, it was effectively 28 days from the moment that that customer was notified. Now, the Australian Communications and Media Authority says they're actively investigating if there are any other instances of 000 calls failing to connect. But obviously, this all comes after 3 deaths were attributed in mid-September to an Optus outage that affected more than 600 000 calls across the country.